Welcome back to Chips and Salsa, where we talk about security and intel. I'm Jerry.
I'm Krobe.
Crow, we got a great show today.
Yes, we
This
do.
is we're going to be talking to a couple of folks about a paper that they wrote 20 years ago that in 2022 won the Intel Hardware Security Test of Time Award.
Ooh.
So this award is for papers that were published at least 10 years before and demonstrated significant and lasting impact in the field. And the winning paper was selected by the Hardware Security Academic Award Committee here at Intel, who reviewed a whole bunch of papers from way back when. And the one that won was called Aegis Architecture for Tamper-Evident and Tamper-Resistant Processing. And this paper was published way back in 2003. And the research describes a single chip secure processor, including a configuration where the underlying system software is untrusted. And as you'll see in our discussion with Srini and Ed, this was not popular research back then. People were asking, why do we need these levels of security? And today, most of what they researched back then is in production. So with that, let's cut to Ed and Srini and hear about their research back in 2003.
Yeah.
Srini and Ed, thank you for joining us on Chips and Salsa. Can you please introduce yourselves, what institutions you are at and what your areas of focus are?
Thanks. Pleasure to be here. My name is Srini Devidas. I'm a longtime professor at MIT. I've been at MIT 35 years. And I work in the areas of computer architecture and computer security and their intersection.
All right. Hi, I'm Ed Saul. I'm a former PhD student, worked with Srini. So my research area is very similar, also computer architecture, security. More recently, I've been also doing some AI, ML related work. So I've been at Cornell University since like 2007 or so. Actually, currently I'm on leave and also spending some time at Meta AI research.
That's nice. Great.
So from a high level, can you give our viewers an overview of this research that you were awarded for?
Sure. Let me start and then Ed can fill in details that I'm sure I'm going to miss. So we had this project, it was called Project Oxygen, that was begun by Michael Dertouzos, who was my lab director in the Lab for Computer Science. That's what it was called at the time, 1999. And Project Oxygen was about pervasive human-centered computing. And I got pulled in as one of the hardware guys, or maybe the hardware guy. And the idea was pervasive computing. So you had little, handy devices. This predated smartphones, of course, right? 1999 predated IoT. But you can think of it as it was essentially the Internet of Things, except we didn't call it that. It was called human-centered computing, computing all around us and so on and so forth. And to cut a long story short, I was tasked with thinking about security of two kinds of devices. These little itty-bitty devices that you would carry around and like actuators, remote controllers, phones, but as I said, no smartphones back then. And, kind of this giant device that they called it the E21 or the Environment 21, which was essentially the equivalent of a cloud, right? So there you go. You had kind of this notion that we were going to use computing, both on our person and remotely, in the cloud. And so all the security issues that came up because of that were things that people, including myself, were asked to worry about. And I was kind of, as I said, placed in charge, if you will, of the hardware. And so I started thinking about how do you authenticate devices? What does it mean to run something on a processor and get some sort of guarantee that computation was carried out correctly, and so on and so forth. And Ed had actually joined MIT as a fresh PhD student in '99, and then it took a couple of years, and we worked on a couple of other things unrelated to security. And I'll let Ed talk about the specific work that he ended up doing for his PhD thesis. And this paper was essentially a big part of his PhD thesis.
Yeah, the work itself is called Aegis, Single Chip Secure Processor. And so the main technical idea there was a question of can we actually provide a stronger security protection, basically protecting your secrets and also make sure your program and data cannot be corrupted or changed maliciously. When you cannot fully trust the environment that this computer is operating or the software that's running. So traditionally, we have to trust the operating systems or maybe hypervisors or the low-level software to provide security guarantees. And the question is, can we do this by actually only trusting a single piece of processor chip and no other software or no other components such as, say, main memory or disk or storage network in the system. So this one shows that you can actually separate this resource management and also the protection and provide a fairly strong guarantees on the confidentiality and integrity by providing cryptographic and also hardware-based protection on the secure chip, while having an attestation where you can have a hardware tell what kind of software, what kind of hardware it's actually running on. So this kind of built on there's a work from the Stanford called execute-only memory, which talked about this idea of providing security using hardware. That work did in the context of originally in the sort of a copy protection, execute only kind of cannot copy kind of context. And this showed that you can do it a single chip in the general purpose computing using, and also showed how to do that with the memory protection with the cryptographic primitives. And it seems like at the time, Srini mentioned the pervasive computing, IoTs, like embedded systems working in the environment. More recently, it seems like this technology is becoming more relevant because also partly we are consolidating more into cloud computing. So as you have these cloud providers, can I actually have a stronger protection without really fully trusting all the cloud software or the cloud providers themselves?
Yeah, I just wanted to add a little bit more. We were concerned with security in these itty-bitty devices and in the environment in the cloud. And we're concerned with physical attacks. In particular, if somebody could take away your device and essentially walk away with it, and then we didn't want your entire ecosystems to be compromised. And so this idea that we would trust hardware and nothing else, and hardware is a great place to store secret information, really was central to the whole project. And there was a sister project on physical unclonable functions that kind of really dovetailed into the Aegis project. And I won't say much more other than saying that physical unclonable functions provided physical security for secret keys. But together, we felt like we could solve kind of these two sets of problems. Small devices that you want to do some computation on, and they had to be physically secure, and these bigger devices that were in the environment, in the walls or what have you, or in the attic. And we wanted to be able to say, we don't really trust anything but the hardware, but we want a tested execution. We want to know that our software was run correctly.
Yeah, this research back in 2003 was pretty forward-looking, it seems. What were some of the challenges that you ran into, and maybe even some of the fun parts of doing this research?
I mean, it was all fun. Challenges. So yeah, this is all fun. We don't do anything that isn't fun. We stop doing it. I mean, that's the beauty of academia, right? 35 years and counting. Well, if you count, close to 40 if you count my grad school, which was also enormously fun. But I have to say, what was challenging is we had to do a bunch of convincing, in terms of saying, well, do you really need this level of security? I remember when this paper or the subsequent paper that it was also called, it was also on the Aegis processor, and I can't remember whether it was a 2003 paper that won the award or the follow-up. But I remember getting reviews back saying, well, I'm not sure anyone would need this level of security. And I don't think this is ever going to get used. But you know what? It's probably worth doing. I mean, it's kind of a moonshot. Let's go ahead and accept this paper, right? And so we're like, thank you very much. That was a good review as far as we were concerned. So I think just from even though we were trying to do disruptive work in an academic setting, it wasn't something that I think was easily marketed, and that was partly because the people hadn't thought about Internet of Things. They really hadn't thought about cloud computing, and we wanted to not justify our work using digital rights management (DRM) because we just felt like it was kind of the wrong application. And so that was, I would say, the biggest thing that was challenging, right?
What a contrast, right, between 2003 and today. Are we ever going to need that kind of security?
Right.
How about you, Ed? What what were the challenges and the fun parts for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think this security and the hardware are kind of two separate topics at the time mostly. So I think came from more of a hardware architecture side background. So learning this new kind of security crypto, that was a lot of fun for me, and also bit of a challenge too. And Srini mentioned actually the challenge of convincing other people. I think that was from the student point of view. Your paper keep rejected is pretty painful, and especially because architecture was mostly about the performance and energy efficiency at the time, and security communities was mostly about software security. And there's a very maybe small community of crypto engines and crypto hardware. So we had a bit of challenges in terms of getting the right reviewers or have reviewers understand why you were doing it, or even is this secure or not. Fun part-wise, I think I kind of wanted to point out actually people, because I feel it was a lot of fun, maybe because I think we had a really good set of people to interact every single day and have discussions and make progress continuously. Srini is also type of a person who would just join the kind of office, come basically visit your office every single day and have discussions or questions and so on. So, and the other co-authors like Blaise Gusson, Dwayne Clark, Martin Bendick, they're all really great set of people to have a discussion. We also had weekly meetings. Most of techniques are generated during this large group meetings, where that lasted 3-4 hours almost every week. With ice creams, so maybe the sugar rush and the long discussions, they're fun and also productive.
All my students from that time thank Ben and Jerry's, for their theses. And so the other thing I was going to say was that it was serendipitous. We had the Oxygen project. We had Ed, who was a computer architect, pure and simple. That's what he wanted to do. That's what he did for his master's with me. And then I had Martin van Dijk. These are all authors on the paper. Martin van Dijk, who's essentially, a mathematician, applied mathematician, who was visiting from Philips Research. Philips Research was the sponsor of the Oxygen project. And I had two students about the same age, shall I say, as Ed, PhD age at the time, and Blaise Gusson and Dwayne Clark, who knew more cryptography than I did. I mean, I knew some. I mean, I think Ed knew very little when he started, and all of us knew a lot when we ended. So this goes back to the challenge question that Jerry had. We were taking circuits on one side, where the circuits stored secret keys. We're talking about processor architecture. Obviously, Intel knows all about that. Well, Intel knows about circuits as well. And then we're saying, well, we don't want to trust the operating system, so we're going to add these hardware mechanisms that are going to make the performance worse, and it's going to make the energy larger. And we want to publish it in ISCA, which is a computer architecture conference. And so that I think summarizes the challenges we faced. But it also tells you about how we pulled, I think, a bunch of fields together, right? We wrote papers in the VLSI Circuit Symposium. We wrote papers in AsiaCrypt, which is essentially crypt, for crypto. We wrote papers in ISCA and ICS, which is this paper, the Aegis paper. that Intel kindly gave the award to was in the International Conference on Supercomputing. And so we were trying to do all of this as one group, relatively small number of people. And it was like, well, how do we rewrite our paper because it got rejected? Now we have to rewrite it to a different community, right? Because we were essentially getting reviewed by very different sets of people with very different expertise.
So. That's really interesting. Flashing forward a little bit, you mentioned the award. So we're curious kind of what your thoughts are on the Intel Academic Award and working with Intel.
I mean, it was one of the better days of my life. I mean, I've lived a while, and so I won't call it one of the best days of my life because I have kids, and they have one of them has a PhD, and another one is in the middle of one. So we'll just leave it at that. But I was really, really pleased. This paper won a Test of Time award from the conference, right? I mean, a few years ago, they had a compendium of the best papers from the conference of 30 years of the conference or what have you, and this Aegis paper was included. But this was really one level up. I mean, just having a company really, kind of validate the work in this manner was something that both Ed and I deeply appreciate. I've had obviously interactions with Intel, collaborations. There's students who've gone and Shangyao Yu, who's a professor at Wisconsin-Madison, has written papers with Intel collaborators, not on security, and but Intel SGX. I've also done some work on analyzing Intel SGX and follow-on work to that. So Intel is one of my favorite companies, and this is from a paper award standpoint, this is going to be my favorite one.
Awesome.
I think Srini talked about it was one of his better days. I mean, same for me. I in terms of winning this award was really exciting, in particular because Intel is really, seen as a pioneer who actually took this technology into industry as with our Intel SGX technology. So when people talk about this so-called trusted execution environment, mostly people think about Intel SGX. So getting this award is really rewarding and kind of exciting from that perspective, thinking that work that we did actually had some impact and helped in this technology that's actually being used. And also being at this Meta, seeing what's happening in the industry, like how much work it takes to kind of take like just like vague ideas and techniques to all the way to like system that's working. I felt that Intel did a lot of real heavy lifting, and then it was really thankful for actually acknowledging our paper, which kind of talked about the ideas there. In terms of in general, Intel award was actually given at the reception at Usenix Security, and so in general, I felt that Intel award and also Intel in general seems to be doing a great job of building community and connecting with the hardware security people in both academia and industry. So that actually meeting itself was a great time where we can actually get together as all the top tier researchers in the world who are interested in hardware security. Intel obviously funded multiple projects, especially after Meltdown and Spectre kind of issues. So obviously there's putting money there's a research funding, more people, more students are getting interested in working on this kind of technology. So in terms of helping hardware security researchers build a community and also connecting to Intel, it seems this award as well as the Intel's research projects are definitely helping.
That's amazing feedback, because I think you mentioned Spectre and Meltdown, and I think since that time frame, the media would always try to paint a picture that Intel and academic researchers are at odds, and that's actually not the case, which is why we like to bring folks like yourselves on to the show to talk about your experiences and the fact that we do actually try to build a community ecosystem around this kind of research. So what is next for you guys in your areas of study?
So I always was interested in cryptography, right from the time of this Aegis paper, and I've continued to be interested in cryptography and applied cryptography. I do think that there's more to be done, a lot more to be done in integrating well, how do you solve secure computing? I think that's the way of putting it. And there's the trusted execution environment, Aegis work, Intel SGX, what have you. There's the sort of full-fledged cryptographic solution, which says, I don't want anything other than a programmable processor. The processor can be agnostic to security, and I'm going to use techniques like homomorphic encryption, and I'm going to get my cryptographic guarantees of integrity and confidentiality using highfalutin cryptography, right? And the TEs have some issues. The side channels, for example, the homomorphic encryption approaches have their own set of issues, mostly relating to performance. One of the things I'm looking at right now, and along with Daniel Sanchez, one of my neighbors here on this floor, we're looking into using hardware to accelerate cryptography, and take these giant overheads of homomorphic encryption schemes and effectively getting a cryptographically secure, trusted execution environment by using cryptography, and then it's viable because you can accelerate the cryptography to the point where it's usable, right? So anyway, so that's kind of where I'm at. I'd like to look at the spectrum and maybe find the sweet spot that has a higher level of security because it's not susceptible to side channel attacks. The nice thing of cryptography is if you don't trust the hardware, you're not resistant to side channel attacks. But I do think that the overheads are kind of on the high side right now. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Yep. How about you, Ed?
Yeah, so I'm also kind of, high level secure computing is generally what I've been working on and thinking about. There are two main things I'm kind of extending my research. One is using essentially secure computing or TEs for mobile AI and ML use cases. It seems like AI is inherently kind of depending on the data and ability to access data, train on the data. And as we use more of an AI and ML for different use cases, there are more kind of privacy concerns, like AI constantly running and looking at what you're looking at and so on. So basically building secure systems with a combination of hardware and crypto to enable really strong privacy preserving computation and privacy preserving ML is one thing I'm looking into. In particular, I think accelerators are kind of interesting places. So we've been thinking about how to extend the TEs for hardware accelerators, in particular accelerators for AI and machine learning. And these are the kind of sort of separate chip that's physically isolated from the CPUs. They tend to be much simpler compared to high performance processors. So kind of pushing that direction and also combining that with cryptographic techniques is one thing I've been looking into. Another kind of area is kind of related to providing a higher security assurance for this kind of secure hardware and secure systems. Because when especially talk about TEs, people ask, okay, how do I really trust this thing? So this has to be really trustworthy, not just trusted or just ask people to trust. So I've been looking into both a little bit more of a formal side. I have a collaborator, Andrew Myers at Cornell, who's an expert in programming languages. So I've been thinking about how to augment the design language with the security properties so that we can provide better formal guarantees. And also we've been working with some AI researchers on using AI tools to better kind of security vulnerability analysis more automatically.
Very nice. Well, I want to thank both you gentlemen for your research 20 years ago and your ongoing efforts to help make the industry a better place today. We really appreciate your time talking with us.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
All right. Thank you.
Wow. What a great interview. Two amazing academics we got the opportunity to work with. And Jerry, it's just amazing to think that this seminal paper that's almost 20 years old now is still kind of predicted a lot of where we are. It's just amazing the kind of insight and vision these researchers had back in the day.
Yeah. It was a great interview, and it makes me proud as an Intel employee to hear those guys talk about what it's like to work with Intel, because we really do try to build that ecosystem and that engagement with external researchers. So that was great to hear.
Indeed. Well, and I think with that, we'll call this a wrap. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.